Most people spend years working for money before they ever stop and ask a very basic question. What is actually happening here? You wake up, you go to work, you get paid, a bunch of money disappears before it reaches your bank account. The rest lands in an account at a bank that uses it for its own business. Then prices rise, bills show up, your credit score judges your behavior, and somewhere in the background, inflation is quietly taking little bites out of your future. That sounds dramatic, but honestly, that is everyday life. And the strange part is, most people are told how to earn money, how to budget money, maybe how to save money a little. Very few people are ever shown how the whole machine works. So this video is about that machine. Because once you understand the system, everyday money decisions stop feeling random. You start seeing why some people always feel behind, even on decent income. You start seeing why two people with the same salary can end up in completely different financial lives. And you start noticing that the biggest money mistakes usually don't look dramatic in the moment. They look normal. That's the dangerous part. Let's start with the first shock most people get. Your paycheck is not your paycheck. You see a salary on paper. Maybe it says $60,000 a year. Nice. Sounds solid. Sounds adult. Sounds like life should be fairly under control. Then reality shows up. Federal taxes, state taxes, depending on where you live, Social Security, Medicare, maybe health insurance, maybe retirement deductions, and suddenly your money has been through a full group project before it even meets you. This is where a lot of people start feeling like the game is rigged. Because from your point of view, you worked the hours. You dealt with the customers. You sat through the meetings. You answered the emails. You survived the office Slack messages at 4:52 p.m. And yet, the amount that lands in your account is way lower than the amount you thought you earned. That gap matters psychologically, because people tend to build lifestyles around gross income in their head, while life is funded by net income in real life. That difference causes a lot of quiet financial stress. Let's say two people both hear they're making $5,000 a month. One of them mentally spends like they have $5,000. The other realizes they may only keep $3,800 or $3,500 after everything comes out. Those are two very different lives. Over a year, that misunderstanding can create thousands of dollars of overspending. Over 10 years, it can keep someone in a constant cycle of catch-up. And taxes don't stop at income. You pay tax when you earn, then often when you spend, sometimes when you invest successfully, sometimes when you own property, sometimes through things so buried in pricing you barely notice. Money gets taxed at multiple stages of its life. That doesn't automatically make taxes evil. A functioning country costs money. Roads, courts, schools, sanitation, public health systems, infrastructure, regulation, national defense, that all has a bill attached. But for your personal finances, the lesson is simple. Never build your life around the number before deductions. Build it around what actually arrives. That one shift makes budgets more realistic, savings goals more honest, and lifestyle inflation harder to justify. And now your money lands in a bank, which sounds comforting, safe, protected, responsible, like your money is sitting calmly in a vault somewhere under dramatic lighting. It's a nice image. It's also mostly not what's happening. A bank is not a storage company with marble floors. A bank is a business. When you deposit money, the bank does not lovingly admire it on your behalf. It puts that money to work. It lends, it invests, it earns. That's the point. Banks live in the spread. They pay you a certain amount to keep your money there. Then they lend that money out at a higher rate. Your savings account might earn a little. A mortgage, car loan, business loan, or credit line earns them a lot more. That gap is the business model. So when people say, the bank has my money, the more accurate version is, the bank owes me my money. That sounds like a small wording difference. It isn't, because it changes how you think about risk, liquidity, and where you park cash. This is why emergency funds matter so much. Not because personal finance people enjoy repeating themselves, because cash access matters. If your entire life is optimized for long-term growth, but you have no liquid cushion, one job loss or one medical bill can force terrible decisions. And this is also why understanding FDIC insurance matters in the US. Because confidence in the banking system depends a lot on people believing their money is available when they need it. That trust keeps panic low. Panic is expensive. Here's where it gets interesting. The bank uses your money to make money. But a lot of people leave their cash in accounts earning almost nothing while paying double-digit interest elsewhere. That is one of the weirdest normal things in personal finance. Someone can have $20,000 sitting in a low-yield account earning almost nothing, while also carrying a credit card balance at 24%. In that setup, their own balance sheet is working against them. One side is whispering, the other side is on fire. And that takes us to interest, which may be the most important force in personal finance. Interest is one of those concepts people think they understand because the word is familiar. But familiar is not the same as understood. Interest is the price of time when money is involved. If you borrow money, you pay for the privilege of using someone else's capital before you've earned it yourself. If you save or invest money, somebody else pays you for the privilege of using your capital. Same concept, Two very different experiences. This is why debt and investing feel like opposite worlds. In debt, time works against you. In investing, time works for you. Let's put numbers on it. Say you carry a $6,000 credit card balance at 24% interest and only make minimum payments. That debt can sit around for years. You can easily pay thousands in interest on top of the original amount. You're spending future money to clean up past spending. Now flip it. Say you invest $500 a month and earn an average annual return of 8%. Do that for 30 years, and you're around the neighborhood of $700,000 or more. Same person, same monthly amount. One version sends $500 into a hole. The other sends $500 into a machine. That's why interest is so powerful. It doesn't care about your intentions. It only cares about direction. And this is where many people quietly get stuck. They think financial progress is about earning more first. Sometimes it is. Income matters. But plenty of financial progress comes from fixing the direction of money before income rises. Because if every month your money flows toward high-interest debt, impulsive spending, and depreciating stuff, a raise helps less than people think. A raise feels big. A broken money system eats raises for breakfast. This is also why a lot of flashy purchases are way more expensive than they look. A $40,000 car does not cost $40,000 if it's financed at a high rate over several years. By the time interest, insurance, taxes, maintenance, and depreciation have all done their thing, the true cost is in a completely different league. This is one of the quiet habits that separates people who look wealthy from people who become wealthy. One person buys the maximum lifestyle their monthly payment can tolerate. The other asks what the full long-term cost will be. Those people can have the same income and live in the same zip code and still be 10 years apart financially. Now let's talk about the thief that almost never kicks down the door: inflation. Inflation is subtle enough to be ignored and strong enough to reshape your life. That's a nasty combination. Because when inflation is low, people shrug. When it spikes, everybody notices. Groceries feel heavier. Gas feels rude. Rent starts acting like it has a personal grudge. But even when inflation looks modest, it matters a lot over time. If inflation averages 3% a year, prices roughly double in about 24 years. That means something costing $1,000 today could cost around $2,000 in your future, while your savings sit there looking loyal and slowly becoming less useful. This is why holding too much cash for too long is riskier than it feels. Cash feels safe because the number stays stable, but the purchasing power does not. You look at your bank account and think, good, still have 10 grand. Inflation looks at the same 10 grand and says, cute. This is one of the reasons investing matters so much. Because if your money grows slower than inflation, you are losing ground even while doing what feels responsible. And this is the part most people never think about. Inflation changes behavior before it changes spreadsheets. When people feel like money won't go as far later, they start reacting now. They rush purchases. They finance things sooner. They negotiate harder. They become more anxious. They feel less patient. That can lead to better planning. It can also lead to chaos. Two people can experience the same inflation environment and respond completely differently. One says, everything's getting expensive. I should get serious about investing, skill building, and controlling fixed costs. The other says, everything's getting expensive. I might as well enjoy myself. Emotionally, both reactions make sense. Financially, they don't end in the same place. Let's say both people get a $5,000 windfall. One uses it to pay down a high-interest card and start a Roth IRA. The other upgrades a vacation, buys a nicer phone, and tells themselves they deserve it after a hard year. That sounds harmless, but 10 years later, the gap is no longer $5,000. It's the lost investment growth. It's the interest that kept compounding. It's the habit each decision reinforced. Money choices are rarely one-time events. They are identity rehearsals. You practice being the kind of person who builds, or the kind of person who leaks. Now let's raise the stakes, because sometimes the economy itself gets weird. Recessions are where personal finance stops being theory and becomes survival. In a strong economy, bad money habits can hide. Raises come in, jobs are available, credit flows, markets feel forgiving. It's easier to mistake a good environment for personal brilliance. Then the environment changes. Hiring slows, layoffs start, bonuses disappear, overtime vanishes, clients cut spending, housing cools, stocks fall. And suddenly all the fragile parts of someone's financial life become visible at once. That's what recessions do. They expose dependence. Dependence on one paycheck. Dependence on debt. Dependence on stable consumer demand. Dependence on the idea that next month will probably be similar to this month. And here's the uncomfortable truth. A recession does not create most personal financial weaknesses, it reveals them. The person with 6 months of expenses saved, low fixed costs, diversified investments, and strong career skills experiences a recession very differently from the person with no emergency fund, car debt, credit card debt, high rent, and a lifestyle that requires everything to go right. Same economy, different outcomes. This is why resilience is a financial asset. People tend to think of wealth as visible stuff. The house, the car, the vacations, the watch that looks like it has opinions. Real wealth often looks much more boring. It looks like margin, room to breathe, room to say no, room to absorb shocks without the whole system collapsing. And that idea connects directly to credit scores. Because credit scores are one of the strangest games adults are expected to play. They matter a lot. Most people don't fully understand them, and the consequences of misunderstanding them are expensive. A credit score is basically a trust score for debt. It tells lenders how likely you are to handle borrowed money responsibly. That score influences whether you get approved and what interest rate you pay. And the rate matters more than people think. Take a mortgage. Let's say one borrower qualifies for 6%. Another with weaker credit gets 7.5%. On a $350,000 mortgage, that gap can mean hundreds more per month and well over $100,000 in extra interest over the life of the loan. That's not a rounding error. That is life money. A credit score can also affect car loans, insurance pricing in some cases, apartment applications, and even general financial flexibility. What makes this frustrating is that being good with money and having a strong credit score are related, but not identical. You can hate debt, avoid it completely, and still have thin credit history. You can have money in the bank and still pay more to borrow because the score model doesn't know your personality. It knows your patterns. Pay on time. Keep utilization low. Don't open too many accounts too quickly. Keep old accounts alive when sensible. Manage the game carefully. It's annoying. It's also worth learning. Because again, the system rewards people who understand the rules even when the rules are weird. Now here's the mid-video twist most people miss. The real money game is not mainly about money. It's about behavior. That's the deeper layer underneath everything we've talked about. Taxes are math. Interest is math. Inflation is math. Credit scores are math. But the outcomes people get are usually behavioral. Can you delay gratification? Can you tolerate looking less rich for a while? Can you make decisions that won't impress anyone today, but will quietly transform your future? Can you avoid using spending as emotional anesthesia? Can you sit still long enough for compounding to work? That's the actual test. Because personal finance is full of situations where the smart move feels boring, slow, and socially invisible. Driving the older paid-off car is not thrilling. Putting money into index funds is not cinematic. Keeping housing reasonable is not glamorous. Skipping lifestyle inflation after a raise does not make for dramatic Instagram stories. But these choices stack, and stacking is where wealth starts to look unfair. Imagine two friends, both 25 years old, both earning $75,000. One upgrades everything with each raise. Better apartment, nicer car, more dining out, more subscriptions, more financing. They look successful almost immediately. The other increases lifestyle slowly. They invest 20% of income, keep fixed costs manageable, avoid bad debt, learn a valuable skill, build cash reserves. At 35, the first person may still look richer. At 45, the second person often becomes freer. At 55, the difference can be massive, because wealth is often delayed visibility. That's what makes it hard psychologically. The rewards are real, they're just late. And while we're here, we should talk about money itself, because money is one of the strangest things humans ever agreed on. It only works because we collectively trust it. A dollar bill is paper and ink with social permission attached. Your bank balance is mostly digital entries and institutional trust. Even the stock market at some level is a giant machine of expectations, probability, ownership rights, and shared belief. Money works because people believe it works. That sounds abstract until you realize how practical it is. Trust is the foundation of all of it. Trust in government, trust in contracts, trust in banks, trust in payment systems, trust in markets. Trust that when you accept dollars today, someone else will accept them tomorrow. This matters because once you understand money as a system of trust, you start seeing why stability matters so much. Stable institutions lower friction. Low friction helps commerce. Commerce supports jobs, investment, productivity, and growth. And on the personal level, trust also shapes earning power, which brings us to value. People love asking, how do I make more money? That's understandable. A better question is, how do I become more valuable? Income is usually downstream from value. Not always immediately, not perfectly. Life is messier than motivational quotes. But over time, people who can solve costly problems, save time, reduce risk, create demand, entertain, educate, organize, persuade, build, or lead tend to earn more. Because money follows usefulness. Sometimes literal usefulness, sometimes perceived usefulness, usually some mix of both. This explains why software engineers, surgeons, elite salespeople, founders, entertainers, and niche experts can earn far beyond average wages. They are attached to high-value outcomes, or outcomes perceived as high value. And in modern economies, scale matters. If you can create value once and deliver it many times, income can disconnect from hours. That's where leverage enters the picture. A teacher in one room reaches 30 people. A teacher on the internet can reach 3 million. A local business helps one neighborhood. A software platform helps the entire country. Leverage changes the economics of time. And that matters because time is the one asset everybody spends, whether they notice it or not. Most people begin by trading time directly for money. That's normal. It's where almost everyone starts. But long-term wealth usually requires some kind of separation between effort and earnings. That could be investments. It could be equity. It could be a scalable business. It could be content. It could be intellectual property. It could be systems that continue producing after the initial work is done. Because if income only happens when you are personally present and actively working, there's always a ceiling. And here's the beautiful part. You do not need to become a billionaire tech founder for this to matter. Even basic investing is a form of leverage. You earn money from labor. Then you deploy a portion of that money into productive assets. Those assets generate returns. Those returns buy more assets. And over time, your money begins contributing to your future alongside your labor. That's a huge shift. It means your future stops depending only on how many hours you can sell. This is why investing is such a big deal for ordinary people. Not because it's exciting every day, it usually isn't, because it's one of the cleanest ways to convert discipline now into freedom later. Let's run a simple contrast. Person A saves cash only. Person B invests consistently in broad market funds. Both save $500 a month for 25 years. Person A ends up with $150,000, plus whatever tiny interest they received. Person B, assuming a reasonable long-term return, can end up with several $100,000 more. That gap is not effort. That gap is structure. Same monthly sacrifice, different machine. Of course, investing has risk. Markets fall, bad years happen, headlines get dramatic. People start speaking in all caps. But the long-term risk for many people is not temporary market volatility. It's failing to own productive assets at all. Because wages alone often struggle to outrun housing costs, healthcare costs, education costs, and inflation over a lifetime. This is why the people who seem calm around money are often the ones who understand the system best. They know a recession is painful but temporary. They know market declines are normal. They know a paycheck is important but limited. They know debt can be useful when controlled and destructive when casual. They know spending decisions create future obligations. They know time is either helping them or hurting them every single day. And maybe most importantly, they know wealth is less about one heroic move and more about repeated sensible moves. That may sound slightly underwhelming. It's also great news, because repeated sensible moves are available to normal people. You do not need a perfect childhood. You do not need elite connections. You do not need a six-figure bonus next quarter. You do not need to suddenly become a minimalist monk who gets emotional fulfillment from watching ETF contributions settle. You need awareness, then consistency. Know what you actually keep after taxes. Keep fixed costs under control. Treat high-interest debt like an emergency. Build cash reserves. Protect your credit. Invest regularly. Increase your value in the marketplace. Use time intelligently. Avoid building a lifestyle that assumes ideal conditions forever. Do that long enough, and the system starts working with you more often than against you. And that's really the point of understanding money. It helps you stop taking every financial event personally. A lot of people think they're bad at money, when the truth is, they've never been shown how the forces around them interact. They blame themselves for feeling behind while living in a world of taxes, inflation, debt marketing, lifestyle pressure, and constant temptation engineered to separate them from their future cash flow. Once you can see the incentives clearly, your decisions get sharper. You notice that buying status on credit is a terrible trade. You notice that a low monthly payment can hide a high total cost. You notice that keeping expenses flexible creates resilience. You notice that compounding rewards patience in ways that feel almost ridiculous over long periods. You notice that the goal is not to look financially impressive by Friday. The goal is to become financially free over time. And yes, time is the final piece. Because time is where all the quiet good decisions go to become powerful. A modest investment made at 25 has a very different life than the same investment started at 45. A bad debt habit started at 22 can become expensive in ways that are hard to reverse later. A career built carefully over a decade carries a different weight than a career drifted through by accident. Time magnifies direction. That's why small choices matter so much. They don't stay small. The person who learns these rules early gets an advantage. The person who learns them late still benefits massively. The only truly expensive option is to never learn them at all. So if money has felt confusing, frustrating, or vaguely rigged, that feeling isn't coming from nowhere. It is a complicated system, but it is learnable. And once you understand what taxes are doing, what banks are doing, what debt is doing, what inflation is doing, what credit is doing, and what investing can do, money starts becoming less mysterious. Still important, still emotional, still sometimes annoying, but less mysterious. And that alone can change your life. Because clarity leads to better decisions. Better decisions lead to stronger habits. Stronger habits lead to more options. And more options, more than almost anything, is what financial freedom actually feels like. If you want more videos that break down money, investing, and the path toward long-term freedom in a way that actually makes sense, subscribe to the channel and keep watching.